My name is Jiryu. I'm a priest here at the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. And tonight I'm going to be giving a talk about non-self. Sounds kind of spooky and strange, huh? Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see as we go along here. You got the program there that's not really the quote that I'm going to use. There's several different versions of this quote. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. So this statement comes from the early teachings of the Buddha in the Pali Canon. It is a way of talking about anatta, which means non-self or no self. And it comes from the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, which is the second sermon that the Buddha gave and to his first students, which is what they call the group 5, which is a group that he was doing ascetic practices with and then went off to do something else, and then became awakened and went back and found them and started giving talks. So the first talk that he gives, anybody know what the first talk was? No? Okay, so it's the Four Noble Truths, which is the foundation of all Buddhism. It's, there is suffering or dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction and suffering are caused by grasping and clinging. And there's a way out of that. And the way out of that is the Eightfold Path, which is what the practice of Buddhism is. This second sermon, the Buddha taught the concept of anatta, which is non-self. And in this talk, he addresses the idea of the 5 aggregates, which is an ancient Indian philosophical way of talking about how human experience arises. And these are form, sensation, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. And I'm going to read the sutra here in a moment, but in the sutra, he goes through all of these processes which are the basis of our human experience, and shows how none of them can be regarded as permanent, pre-existing, or unchanging. So, not a self. His reasoning is that if these aggregates were really our self, we would have control over them. Since they're impermanent, changing, they're subject to dissatisfaction and suffering. Therefore, they cannot be a self. Therefore, clinging to these aggregates as I or mine or me leads to dissatisfaction and suffering. So I'm going to run through this real quick. So this is a short sutra, but I've kind of truncated it even more. And I'm using a little bit more modern nomenclature. If you've ever run across the Pali Canon, the original teachings of the Buddha, there's a lot of repetition. So there's going to be a lot of ellipses in here, and also, terminology that you might not be familiar with, especially if you haven't been kind of steeping yourself in Buddhism for a while. This is the traditional way that all the Pali Canon sutras start. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Varanasi in the deer park at Isipatana. There the Blessed One addressed the group of monks of the group of 5 thus: Monks, "Venerable sir," those monks replied, the Blessed One said this: "Monks, form is non-self. For if monks' form were self, form would not lead to affliction, and it would be possible to have it of form. Let my form be this, let my form not be that. But because form is non-self, form leads to affliction, and it is not possible to have it of form. Let my form be this, let my form not be that." Feeling is non-self. Perception is non-self. Volitional formations are non-self. Consciousness is non-self. For if monks' consciousness were self, consciousness would not lead to affliction, and it would be possible to have it of consciousness. Let my consciousness be thus. Let my consciousness not be thus. But because consciousness is non-self, consciousness leads to affliction, and it is not possible to have it of consciousness. Let my consciousness be such. Let my consciousness not be such. What do you think, monks? Is form permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, venerable sir. Is what is impermanent dissatisfaction, or happiness? Dissatisfaction, venerable sir. Is what is impermanent, dissatisfaction, and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus: this is me, this is mine, this is myself? No, venerable sir. Is feeling permanent or impermanent? Is perception permanent or impermanent? Are volitional formations permanent or impermanent? Is consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, venerable sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Dissatisfaction, venerable sir. Is what is impermanent dissatisfaction and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus: this is me, this is mine, this is myself? No, venerable sir. Therefore, monks, any kind of form whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all form should be seen as it really is, with correct wisdom, thus: this is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. Any kind of feeling whatsoever, any kind of perception, any kind of volitional formation, any kind of consciousness, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all consciousness should be seen as it really is, with the correct wisdom, thus: this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. Seeing thus, monks, the instructed noble disciple experiences dispassion towards form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it is liberated. He understands, destroyed is birth and death. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. That is what the Blessed One said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement, and while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the monks of the group of 5 were liberated. So the difficulty in giving a Zen talk is that what we do in our practice in Zen Buddhism is we experiment and experience with our practice. So teachers sometimes get around this by telling stories, or sometimes we just philosophize. But it's not really about philosophizing. It's not really about intellectualizing these ideas. It's about experiencing them. So what I really hope to do by telling you about this stuff is to invite you to reflect on how this teaching applies to your everyday life. Your dissatisfaction and suffering, and your liberation from dissatisfaction and suffering. And to suggest some ways to do that reflecting and experiencing. So this teaching is central to modern Zen practice. In fact, it's central to most Buddhist practice. Because it points directly at non-attachment, impermanence, and the illusory nature of a self. This teaching runs a thread that goes all the way to ancient India, as in the Anattawakana Sutta, and the third sutra that the Buddha gave, which is, you may have heard of this, it's like the fire sermon. You've heard of this? Where he talks about everything is burning. Everything is burning. What he's alluding to there is that everything that we perceive is a process. It's a process. Like a fire. Think like a fire. Well, either there's a fire. See this thing that's a fire. Is it a thing? Fire is a process. And then this teaching is carried over into China, in Chan, and then to Japan, where it's incorporated into Zen Buddhism. And also the Heart Sutra. You familiar with this? 5 mornings a week we chant this here. And there's a part in there that goes, there is no form, no sensation, no perception, no formation, no consciousness. This is the same thing as the Anatta Sutra. And finally, Dogen Zenji is the founder of Soto Zen Buddhism, which is the branch of Buddhism that we study here. And Fukan Zazenji says, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. So let's break down this statement a little bit. This is not me. We need to begin challenging conventional identity. So, how do we do that? Well, let's think about, what do we call me? Is it our bodies? Our thoughts and emotions? Our opinions? Our taste in music? All these things are changing. All of them are impermanent. When you attach to any of these things, and that's just a short list, it goes on and on, right? You attach to any of these things, start getting rigid, start getting stuck in a rut, and start believing that you can't be anything else. something to consider. One way we can kind of start stepping out of attaching to things is by practicing just doing, or what sometimes just popularized as being mindfulness, right? Have any of you done retreats? You know what work practice is, right? So what the idea is that, okay, we've got this practice where we sit here and meditate. So what happens if when I get up, I just go back? Well, the idea is to do a thing without putting yourself into it. So now I'm just washing the dishes. I'm just sweeping the floor. I'm just running. It's a funny story that Tim Burkett, who's a senior teacher here, used to tell about Suzuki Roshi. So a bunch of students came upon him reading a newspaper and drinking coffee in the morning. He said, "You're only supposed to be doing one thing at a time." He says, "I am. I'm reading the newspaper and drinking my coffee." Just do things. Eat when you're hungry. Sleep when you're tired. There's an old Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. I want to suggest something from my own practice. And that's that it might be helpful to think of ourselves as a verb instead of a noun. Something that's happening. Is anybody familiar with the writer Brian Geisen? He was a partner of the writer William Burroughs. They wrote a book called Here to Go. Here's a passage from that book. What are we here for? Does the great metaphysical nut revolve around that? Well, I'll crack it for you right now. What are we here for? We're here to go. For Geisen, existence is transient, and individuals are in a constant state of becoming. The essence of life lies in movement and transformation rather than in static goals or destinations. This is not mine. I'm going to say ownership is an illusion. What does mine mean? It means ultimate control, right? I own something, I have complete control over it. Clinging and ownership are sources of dissatisfaction and suffering. I don't know how many times I've had a thing that I was relying on, an object that was mine, fail on me. Last week is like the first time that I rode my bicycle over here to the Zen Center. And after I taught the intro class, I went out to my bike. It's pitch black outside. I'm going to ride my bike home. Turn it on. Hit the light. Doesn't work. Oh boy. Dissatisfaction. Cars break down. Bodies break down. Relationships break down. Do you own a car? Do you own your body? Do you have complete control over that? How about relationships? Do you own another person? Do you control them completely? Can you? What about your thoughts, your emotions? Do you own those? Can you completely control them? How about my reputation? I'll get back to that. You've probably heard Zen teachers say a lot of times, let go. Let go. It's because we want to meet life with openness and fluidity. Instead of a passion for results. Instead of greed. This doesn't mean that everything is okay. It's clearly not. But it can work for change, for beneficial change, without latching onto an outcome. You can just do what's right because it's the right thing to do. Just do it. Do it like work practice. This is not myself. So this illusion of a fixed, separate self is not just dogma. It's not just theoretical. It's meant to be experimented with and experienced. Is what I'm saying true? I'm not going to tell you that. See for yourself. Yeah, see for yourself. You're familiar with the idea of Zen koans? The key point of most Zen koans is one question. Who am I? Who am I? What is this? Here's some examples you might have heard before. What was your original face before your parents were born? Who is the one who hears? Where is yourself right now? These questions are not for you to produce an answer. They're designed to dissolve a sense of self. So the answer is essentially beyond language. How do we apply this stuff in our daily lives? What's the number one thing that we do in Zen meditation? Zazen, sitting. Sitting meditation. It's our number one tool. This is a way to directly experience the truth. So I'm not going to tell you whether it's true or not. You can sit in meditation and find out. See if you can find yourself. See if you can do that. Think you can? When thoughts come up in our sitting practice, let them go. I go, mine! My thoughts. Some other kind of tricks you can use during your day-to-day life to work on this stuff. When you get mad for whatever reason, car cuts you off in traffic or whatever. I'm not going to say, everybody gets mad for different reasons, but mad, frustrated. Yeah, maybe work on it when you're super overjoyed. But anytime that's an incredible large amount of emotion comes up, instead of thinking, I'm mad, or I'm frustrated, I'm sad, try thinking, anger is arising, sadness is arising, happiness is arising, frustration is arising. If this is true and there's no fixed sense of I, no real self, there's no separation between us. We're the all. This can lead you to natural compassion. And this happens automatically sometimes. I don't know how many times I've seen in the winter complete strangers helping each other push their cars out of the snowbanks. Why? Natural. Because. There are other examples of that. Before the pandemic, I used to go into the Minnesota State prison system teaching meditation. I got into this because a fellow priest in training at the time was like, oh, there's a group of us, we go and do this. And without even stopping to think about what that entailed, I said, oh yeah, I want to do that. I'm going to go and do that. Yeah. It's a wonderful practice. Just natural. Just do it. Just do it because. So, just a few more things. I want to read you a short teaching story about a Zen master named Hakuin. Anybody here familiar with Hakuin? Because I think this story really encapsulates what living like that might look like. And it touches on a lot of the things that I've been talking about so far. The Zen master Hakuin was praised by his neighbors as one living a pure life. A beautiful Japanese girl whose parents owned a food store lived near him. Suddenly, without any warning, her parents discovered that she was pregnant. This made her parents very angry. She would not confess who the man was, but after much harassment, named Hakuin. In great anger, the parents went to berate the master. Is that so? Was all he would say. Is that so? After the child was born, it was brought to Hakuin. By this time, he had lost his reputation. It just didn't trouble him. And he took very good care of the child. He obtained milk and food and everything he needed from his neighbors. A full year went by, and the girl could stand it no longer. She finally confessed to her parents the truth. The real father of the child was a young man who worked in the fish market. The mother and father of the girl at once went to Hakuin to ask forgiveness and to apologize at great length and to get the child back. Hakuin was willing, and in yielding the child to them, all he said was, "Is that so?" If I let go of mine, what's left? Who is listening to this talk? Non-self is not nihilism. Doesn't mean nothing exists, everything is meaningless. I can be as greedy and as rigid and as self-centered as I want. It means we can be fluid, open, compassionate, and caring. Living with the spirit of non-self does not mean detachment from life, from all that we experience. It means peace and freedom within the life that we have, the way that it really is. And that's what I have to say tonight.